So, some of you may know this, and some of you may not. But over the past 5 or 6 years, I have really dove back into my comic book geekdom. When I was a kid, I was really into X-Men comics. And now as an adult, I've kind of fallen back into it. I've gotten back into it probably because of the MCU films got me really thinking about my love for comics again. And also with all the pop culture stuff we have now, Star Wars is back. Everything is back. Everything I loved as a kid is like, nerd culture became pop culture. And it's just a really exciting time to be alive for a geeky, nerdy person like myself. So, in getting back into comics over the past 5 or 6 years, I decided I was going to go back and read some of the staple books that people recommend, that people praise from through the years, and characters I maybe loved before in other media, but never dove into the comic books. And so, one of those characters I'm diving into right now is Batman. I'm going back and reading a bunch of really great, classic and highly recommended Batman stories. And so I figured in doing that, maybe since I share everything else with you guys that I'm consuming media wise, why not maybe give you guys my opinions on some of these stories that I'm reading, some of these great stories that I'm sure a million people have reviewed before, but giving you the perspective of someone who's getting back into comics after years as an adult and reading this stuff for the first time. And so today I've been reading Batman a lot lately, and I've read quite a few stories, but today I want to go back and talk about an all-time classic, and that is The Killing Joke.
Now, The Killing Joke is an all-time classic Batman story from the mid 1980s. I mean, it is top of the heap for a lot of people, including very accomplished names in the art of storytelling. And with good reason. This story had major effects on the Batman universe and some long-lasting effects. But the most notable thing about this story is that, along with it having exceptional, amazing art, is that we get what many consider to be the definitive backstory of the Joker. Before this, no one really knew anything about his past. And here, Alan Moore tells us his version of how the Joker came to be. So, simultaneously throughout this book, you're getting, it keeps going back and forth from past to present. You're getting two different stories side by side. The Joker backstory, where basically he's a down on his luck comedian, and he falls in with the wrong people and ends up falling into a vat of acid. But not before learning that his wife and child have died in a tragic accident. So, alongside this backstory, we're also getting a present-day story that has major consequences in the Batman world that last decades. So, in this present-day story, Joker shows up at Commissioner Gordon's house, shoots his daughter Barbara, paralyzing her, and they kidnap Gordon, and Batman has to rescue him. It sounds pretty straightforward, I know, but it's all in the dialogue. The greatness of this story is all in the dialogue. There's some really deep stuff in this book, and I think that's why it's held in such high esteem. Wonderful dialogue from the Joker that gives us some insight into the kind of person he is. And because of that, this story kind of redefined the Joker going forward. Like basically every version we've seen of the Joker in film and animation and comic book storylines, most have been a play on this version of the Joker. The man obsessed with chaos, the anarchist who just wants to, as he was in The Dark Knight, a guy who just wants to watch the world burn. He espouses his thoughts on society as a whole, and we get some really deep insight into kind of what makes him tick. Like how every person is just one bad day away from absolute madness, much like his own backstory. And he's out to prove that, and that it applies to everyone, even the best of us, the most moral and upstanding citizens. And so he attempts to prove this theory by torturing Commissioner Gordon, giving him the worst day ever, making him go mad. But the dialogue in this story is so fantastic. Also, we get to see Commissioner Gordon struggle mentally to hang on to sanity. I mean, this story, it's really not much of a Batman story at all. It's definitely a Joker story, and it definitely redefines the character for decades, you know. And I think that's why, as I said, this book is put up there as one of the best Batman stories. And like I said, it's not even really a Batman story. There is some great stuff with Batman, though. There's a conversation at the beginning of the book between Joker and Batman, or at least a Joker imposter and Batman. That continues later in the book as well. But in this conversation, they discuss how they are in a never-ending cycle with each other that will only end one day with the death of one or the other. And this sort of defines not only the Joker, but the relationship between Batman and Joker as well. Eternal enemies heading towards an inevitable doomsday. But, you know, not just that. All of it was really great. You know, the Joker backstory, the present day stuff, the Joker dialogue, the kidnapping of Gordon, the shooting of Barbara Gordon. I mean, I know a lot of people like the story for the Joker backstory, but my favorite part of the book was actually the present day stuff. It was the Joker monologuing to Batman, you know, about the world as he sees it. I love that stuff. I thought it was fantastic, and that's for me the best part of this book. People talk about it all the time. You know, it's nothing new. I know there's no hot takes here, but I guess if there's anything negative I had to say about the book, and it's not even really negative. It's just like a slight nitpick. I'm not even sure if I dislike it. It's just kind of like I'm not sure how I feel about it. But it would be the ending. The way this book ends is basically a cliffhanger. You don't know what happens. You know, the Joker talks the whole time about how, you know, one of them has to die. Well, at the end of this book, you're left to wonder whether or not Batman killed the Joker or not. Like, see, Batman has the Joker basically by his neck at the end of the story. And you don't know what happens because the story ends like Batman has him by the neck, kind of takes him off panel. Batman's laughing maniacally, right? Very un-Batman-like. But, you know, maybe it's proving the Joker's theory that anyone can be driven to madness. But yeah, it cuts off right there. You know, Batman holding the Joker by his throat, laughing, boom, that's the end of the book. And you're like, what? What happened? A lot of people believe that in this story, you know, Batman actually finally killed the Joker after all these years of struggle back and forth. And then some people believe, no, he definitely didn't kill the Joker. But, you know, it's up in the air, and that's the point. It leaves us to where, you know, you can kind of decide for yourself what happened or just wonder like I do. Like, I don't like to make a definitive decision when something happens like that. I like to just leave it there, you know, just leave it. Like, what the hell happened? We'll never know. And, you know, in a way, it drives me crazy because I want to know how the story was intended to end. But there's been no definitive, you know, word by the author or the artist that says for sure what happened at the end of this story. All right, so I enjoyed it very much. Like I said, the ending, I'm unsure about. I don't know if I love it or I'm disappointed by it. But I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. But overall, fantastic story. It's everything that people said about it and maybe even more. Fantastic story. All right, if you enjoy this sort of podcast or video, what I do on this channel is every day I try to talk about a random topic, you know, something that I'm interested in and hopefully other people are as well. It's usually entertainment or pop culture, but sometimes I dive into other stuff, you know, life stories from my questionable youth. Sometimes I have guests on to talk about just, you know, nerdy geekdom, stuff like this, stuff like comic books, stuff like TV shows, all kinds of stuff. But if you're interested in that, getting something new and interesting in your feed every day, then please subscribe to the channel or favorite or follow the podcast however you want to listen. So there's the YouTube channel, Daily BS, and then there's also a podcast version, which you may be listening to right now for Daily BS. So there's a video version and a podcast version. But if you subscribe if you stick around and subscribe to the channel or favorite or follow the podcast, then I guess I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.